What happens when 7 guys from a small, nearly bankrupt company in South Korea become so powerful that the biggest corporations on planet Earth start throwing billions of dollars just to put their faces on a product? We're not talking about small sponsorship deals or quick Instagram posts. We're talking about contracts so massive they literally moved stock markets, crashed websites in seconds, and made Fortune 500 CEOs fly across the world just to sit in a meeting room with BTS's management. But here's the real question. Which global brand was so desperate to sign BTS that they reportedly offered one of the most expensive endorsement deals in the history of entertainment? Which luxury fashion house broke its own century-old tradition just to work with a single member? And which company saw its market value jump by billions, not millions, billions, within hours of announcing a BTS partnership? If you think you know the full story behind BTS and the corporate world, trust me, you don't, because what these brands were willing to pay wasn't just about money, it was about survival in a market where BTS literally controls consumer behavior across continents. Buckle up, because this list is going to blow your mind. Let's get into it.
Number 7. Bottega Veneta. Now, let me ask you something before we even get into this. What kind of luxury brand doesn't use logos, doesn't scream for attention, doesn't plaster its name on billboards, and yet is considered one of the most prestigious fashion houses in the entire world? The answer is Bottega Veneta. And what kind of global superstar doesn't chase clout, doesn't follow trends, spends his free time visiting art museums alone, reads philosophy books for fun, and has an IQ of 148? That's Kim Namjoon, RM, the leader of BTS. When these two worlds collided, the fashion industry didn't just raise an eyebrow, it completely rethought what a brand ambassador could be. See, most people think luxury endorsements are just about slapping a celebrity's face on a campaign and watching the money roll in. But Bottega Veneta operates on a completely different frequency. This is a brand founded in 1966 in Vicenza, Italy, a house built on the philosophy of when your own initials are enough. Their entire identity is about quiet luxury, about craftsmanship so exquisite that you don't need a visible logo to prove your worth. Their iconic intrecciato weave, that signature woven leather technique, has been copied by dozens of brands, but never truly replicated. Under the creative direction of Matteo Blasi, Bottega Veneta doubled down on this philosophy, pulling away from social media entirely at one point, deleting their Instagram, their Facebook, their Twitter, a move that shocked the fashion world but actually increased their desirability. They don't chase the consumer, they let the consumer chase them. So when a brand like that decides to partner with someone, you better believe it's not a random marketing decision, it's a statement. And the statement they made was crystal clear. Kim Namjoon is the living embodiment of everything Bottega Veneta stands for. Let's talk about why this partnership makes so much sense that it almost feels like it was written in the stars. RM has always been different from the typical K-pop idol image. While the industry pushes flashy outfits, loud accessories, and hyper-stylized visuals, Namjoon has consistently gravitated toward minimalism, toward pieces that tell a story through texture and form, rather than through brand names. If you followed his personal style evolution over the years, you've seen him go from the experimental streetwear phase of BTS's early days to a mature, curated wardrobe that reflects someone who genuinely understands fashion as an art form. He's been spotted at Art Basel, he's visited exhibitions at the LACMA, the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, countless galleries in Seoul and Tokyo. His solo album, Indigo, was literally a love letter to art, collaboration, and human connection. His second album, Right Place, Wrong Person, pushed even further into introspective avant-garde territory. This is not a man who wears clothes to be noticed. He wears clothes to express a philosophy. And that's exactly what Bottega Veneta sells. Not clothes, not bags, not shoes, but a philosophy of quiet confidence. When the partnership was announced, RM appeared in Bottega Veneta's campaigns wearing pieces that felt organic to who he already was. There was no awkward product placement, no forced aesthetic shift. He wore the brand's signature leather pieces, oversized silhouettes, earth-toned palettes, and every single look felt like something he would have chosen even without a contract. That authenticity is what makes this deal so powerful in the luxury market. Industry analysts noted that Bottega Veneta's visibility in the Asian market, particularly in South Korea, Japan, and China, saw a measurable spike following the partnership announcement. We're talking about a market that accounts for a massive percentage of global luxury spending. According to Bain & Company reports, the Asia-Pacific region drives nearly 40% of the worldwide luxury goods market, and having someone like RM as your face in that region isn't just smart marketing, it's a strategic power move worth potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in long-term brand equity. The financial details of RM's contract with Bottega Veneta haven't been fully disclosed to the public, but industry insiders and Korean media outlets have reported that deals of this caliber, a global ambassadorship with a top-tier Italian luxury house, typically fall in the range of several $million annually, with some estimates suggesting the total value over the contract period could stretch into the tens of millions when you factor in exclusivity clauses, campaign appearances, event attendance, and the ripple effect on sales. And here's what really makes this partnership stand at number 7 on our list. It's not about the loudest number or the flashiest campaign. It's about the depth of alignment between the person and the brand. Bottega Veneta didn't just hire a celebrity. They found someone who lives and breathes their philosophy without even trying. RM didn't just accept a paycheck. He joined a house that mirrors his own values. That true luxury isn't about showing off, it's about knowing who you are. In a world where most endorsements feel transactional, this one feels like a genuine creative marriage, and that, in the long run, is worth more than any dollar amount on a contract. Namjoon once said in an interview, "I want to be someone who appreciates beautiful things and shares that beauty with others." Bottega Veneta heard that, and they said, "That's our guy." When the leader of the biggest band in the history shares your brand DNA at a molecular level, you don't just offer him a contract, you build a legacy together.
Number 6. Tiffany & Co. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a brand so iconic that just the color of its packaging, that unmistakable robin egg blue, is literally trademarked and recognized in every corner of the globe. A brand that has adorned the necks of Audrey Hepburn, Lady Gaga, Beyoncé, and royalty from multiple continents. A brand that has survived 2 world wars, the Great Depression, economic recessions, and complete shifts in consumer culture, and still stands as the undisputed king of luxury jewelry. That's Tiffany & Co., founded in 1837 in New York City by Charles Louis Tiffany, the man who was literally nicknamed the King of Diamonds. For nearly 2 centuries, this house has defined what elegance means. The Tiffany setting, that 6-pronged solitaire diamond engagement ring introduced in 1886, revolutionized the entire jewelry industry and remains the most copied ring design in history. The breakfast at Tiffany's cultural phenomenon cemented the brand as a symbol of aspiration, romance, and timeless beauty. And after LVMH, the world's largest luxury conglomerate led by Bernard Arnault, acquired Tiffany & Co. in 2021 for a jaw-dropping $15.8 billion, the brand entered a new era of aggressive global expansion, modern reinvention, and strategic celebrity partnerships designed to capture a younger, more diverse, and digitally connected audience. So, when Tiffany & Co. needed someone to represent this new chapter, someone who could bridge the gap between old-world elegance and new-generation cultural power, they didn't pick a Hollywood actor. They didn't pick a European supermodel. They picked Park Jimin of BTS. And honestly, it might be one of the smartest ambassador decisions in the history of luxury jewelry. Let's break down why. Jimin is not just a performer, he's a phenomenon of movement, emotion, and visual storytelling that transcends language. His background in contemporary dance, trained at the Busan High School of Arts before transferring to Korea Arts High School, gave him a physical vocabulary that most entertainers simply don't possess. When Jimin wears jewelry, it doesn't just sit on his body, it becomes part of his expression. Every tilt of the wrist, every turn of the neck, every subtle gesture during a performance or a photo shoot transforms an accessory into a narrative. This is something luxury brands desperately need, someone who doesn't just display the product, but elevates it into an emotional experience. And Tiffany & Co. understood this at a level that goes beyond surface marketing. When the partnership was officially announced, the fashion and luxury press went into overdrive. Jimin appeared in Tiffany & Co. campaigns wearing pieces from their most prestigious collections, the Tiffany Lock Collection, the Tiffany Hardware Collection, and the iconic Tiffany Tea line. Each campaign was meticulously art-directed to highlight Jimin's duality, that rare ability to be simultaneously powerful and delicate, masculine and fluid, bold and tender. The imagery didn't just sell jewelry, it sold a feeling, a mood, an aspiration. And that's exactly what Tiffany & Co. needed in a market that was becoming increasingly competitive, with brands like Cartier, Bulgari, and Van Cleef & Arpels all fighting for the same young luxury consumer. Now let's talk numbers, because the financial impact of Jimin's ambassadorship is where this story gets truly insane. Jimin's fanbase, often referred to within the broader army as some of the most dedicated and financially mobilized supporters in all of entertainment, responded to the Tiffany partnership with immediate and measurable consumer action. Products featured in Jimin's campaigns reported sellout rates within hours of going live. Social media engagement on Tiffany's platforms spiked dramatically, with posts featuring Jimin consistently outperforming every other piece of content the brand published. We're talking about engagement rates that most brands would need to spend millions in paid advertising to achieve, and Jimin was generating them organically simply by existing in the campaign. Industry analysts from publications like Business of Fashion, WWD, and Vogue Business noted that Tiffany's strategic pivot towards K-pop ambassadors, Jimin being the crown jewel of that strategy, was directly aligned with LVMH's broader plan to dominate the Asian luxury market, which, as we mentioned earlier, represents a colossal share of global luxury revenue. South Korea alone has one of the highest per capita luxury spending rates in the world, and Jimin's influence in that market is not just significant, it's overwhelming. The contract value for a global ambassadorship with a house like Tiffany & Co. under the LVMH umbrella is typically structured in multi-year, multi-million-dollar terms. While the exact figures remain confidential, as is standard in luxury, Korean financial media and industry insiders have estimated that deals of this magnitude easily reach into the high single digits to low double digits millions annually, with total contract values over the partnership period potentially reaching several tens of millions of dollars when you include campaign fees, event exclusivity, digital content rights, and performance-based bonuses tied to sales metrics. But here's the part that most people miss. The reason this deal is on our list isn't just about the money Jimin earns, it's about the money he generates. When a single Instagram post from Jimin wearing a Tiffany piece can generate earned media value worth millions of dollars without the brand spending a single additional cent on promotion, you begin to understand why these luxury houses are willing to write checks that would make most corporate boards nervous. Jimin doesn't just wear Tiffany & Co. He makes people want to be the kind of person who wears Tiffany & Co. He sells the dream, the identity, the lifestyle. And in luxury, that's everything. There's also something deeply poetic about this partnership when you think about it personally. Jimin has always been vocal about his insecurities, his journey of self-acceptance, and his desire to find beauty not just in perfection, but in vulnerability. Tiffany & Co., a brand whose entire history is built on the idea that diamonds are formed under pressure, that the most beautiful things emerge from the most intense conditions. It's a metaphorical match that goes beyond marketing. Jimin is the diamond that was formed under the immense pressure of trainee life, of public scrutiny, of the relentless demands of global fame, and he emerged not just intact, but radiant. Tiffany didn't just find an ambassador, they found their narrative in human form.
Number 5. Celine. All right, let's talk about something that the fashion industry has been quietly obsessing over for years but rarely says out loud. There are celebrities who wear fashion, and then there are celebrities who are fashion. The difference is not subtle. You can put $1 million outfit on someone and it looks like a costume. You can put a simple white t-shirt and a black coat on someone else and suddenly it looks like it belongs in a museum. Kim Taehyung, known to the world as V of BTS, belongs so firmly in that second category that the fashion world literally invented a term for his effect on the market. They call it the Taehyung effect. And if you've never heard of it,
Buckle up, because what this man does to the global fashion economy is borderline supernatural. But before we talk about Taehyung, let's talk about Celine, because understanding what this brand represents is essential to understanding why this partnership sent shockwaves through the luxury world. Celine was founded in 1945 by Celine Vipiani in Paris, initially as a made-to-measure children's shoe business. Over the decades, it evolved into a full luxury fashion house, but it was under the legendary creative direction of Phoebe Philo from 2008 to 2018 that Celine became a cult phenomenon, the go-to brand for intellectual, minimalist, powerful women who didn't need to scream to be heard. When Hedi Slimane took over as creative director in 2018, everything changed. Slimane, the man who single-handedly redefined menswear at Dior Homme in the early 2000s, who made skinny jeans and rock and roll aesthetics the blueprint for an entire generation, brought his sharp, rebellious, youthful vision to Celine. He dropped the accent from the logo, introduced a menswear line that was dripping with Parisian cool, and made it clear that Celine, under his direction, would be about edge, attitude, and a kind of effortless beauty that feels dangerous and magnetic at the same time. Now here's where the magic happens. When Hedi Slimane looked at the global landscape of cultural influencers, actors, musicians, athletes, models, and needed someone to represent this new Celine, someone who could embody that razor-sharp aesthetic of slim silhouettes, vintage-inspired tailoring, leather jackets, and that "I just walked out of a French New Wave film" energy, he landed on Kim Taehyung, and the fashion world collectively said, of course, because if you've been paying attention to Taehyung's personal style for even 5 minutes, you already know this man was born to wear Celine. His off-duty looks have been analyzed by fashion editors at Vogue, GQ, Harper's Bazaar, and Elle for years. He mixes vintage pieces with high fashion in a way that feels completely instinctive, never forced, never try hard. He'll pair a boxy, oversized coat with a simple knit and somehow look like he just stepped off a runway in Milan. He wears berets, silk scarves, wide-leg trousers, and chunky boots with a kind of nonchalance that most people spend their entire lives trying to achieve. Taehyung doesn't follow trends, he sets them. And the data backs this up in ways that are absolutely mind-blowing. The Taehyung effect, also referred to as the V effect by Korean media outlets and fashion analysts, is a documented phenomenon where any item Taehyung is seen wearing, carrying, or even standing near sells out within minutes to hours of the image going public. We're not talking about sponsored products or campaign items only. We're talking about random pieces he wears to the airport, to a casual outing. A cardigan he wore once sold out globally. A pair of glasses spotted in a single blurry paparazzi photo, the brand's website crashed from traffic. This phenomenon has been tracked and reported by major outlets including Forbes, Bloomberg, and the Korea Economic Daily. The estimated economic impact of the Taehyung effect across multiple brands and product categories runs into hundreds of millions of dollars, and that's a conservative estimate. So when Celine locked him down as their global ambassador, they weren't just getting a pretty face for a campaign, they were getting a walking, breathing economic engine that turns everything he touches into gold. When Taehyung attended his first Celine show in Paris, the scene outside the venue was unlike anything the Fashion Week circuit had ever seen. Thousands of fans lined the streets. The media frenzy rivaled and by some accounts surpassed the attention typically reserved for A-list Hollywood actors at these events. Inside the venue, Taehyung sat front row alongside fashion editors, celebrities, and industry titans, and every camera in the room pivoted towards him. The images from that day went viral across every social media platform in existence, generating millions of impressions and putting Celine's name in front of demographics the brand had never previously reached at that scale. The subsequent campaigns featuring Taehyung were visual masterpieces that played perfectly into both his aesthetic and Slimane's creative vision. Taehyung in Celine didn't look like an endorsement, it looked like art. Black and white photography, moody lighting, that signature Slimane graininess, and at the center of it all, a face so striking that even other celebrities have publicly called him one of the most beautiful people they've ever seen. The contract between Taehyung and Celine, while not publicly disclosed in full detail, has been the subject of extensive speculation and reporting in Korean and international business media. Global ambassadorships with LVMH-owned houses, and yes, Celine is also under the LVMH empire, meaning Bernard Arnault's conglomerate now has multiple BTS members representing different brands in their portfolio, are structured as multi-year, multi-million-dollar agreements. Estimates from industry insiders
insiders suggest that Taehyung's deal is among the most lucrative ambassador contracts in Celine's history, potentially reaching well into the tens of millions of dollars when factoring in campaign exclusivity, event appearances, digital content rights, and the immeasurable earned media value he generates simply by existing in public while wearing the brand. But beyond the numbers, there's something deeper happening here. Taehyung has spoken openly about his love for art, for photography, for visual storytelling. His solo work, his album Layover, his photography projects, his collaborations with visual artists, all reflect a sensibility that is deeply aligned with what Celine under Hedi Slimane represents. This isn't a partnership built on hype alone. It's built on genuine creative synergy, on a shared language of aesthetics that makes every collaboration feel authentic rather than commercial. And in the luxury world, authenticity is the rarest and most valuable commodity. Kim Taehyung didn't just become a Celine ambassador, he became the face that a new generation associates with Parisian luxury. He became the reason millions of young people around the world walked into a Celine store for the first time. He became proof that influence isn't about followers or algorithms, it's about presence, about that indefinable quality that makes people stop scrolling and stare. Celine found that in Taehyung, and they were willing to pay a fortune to make sure no one else got him first.
Number 4. Valentino. Let me tell you something that most people don't fully appreciate about Min Yoongi. In an industry built on spectacle, where everything is louder, brighter, bigger, more, Yoongi moves like a shadow with the weight of a hurricane. He doesn't walk into a room and demand your attention. He walks into a room and you just can't look away. There's a reason his alter ego is named August D, DT reversed for Daegu Town, his hometown, combined with Suga spelled backward. It's a mirror image, a darker reflection, a version of himself that strips away the idle polish and reveals something raw, unapologetic, and razor-sharp. And when one of the most prestigious fashion houses in the history of Italian couture, a house built on drama, romance, passion, and the bold use of color, needed someone who could embody both elegance and edge, both refinement and rebellion, they looked at the entire global landscape and said, "Give us the quiet one with fire in his eyes." They chose Min Yoongi. And that choice tells you everything you need to know about where luxury fashion is heading. But first, let's talk about Valentino, because this is not just any fashion brand, this is fashion royalty in the most literal sense. Valentino was founded in 1960 by Valentino Garavani in Rome, and from the very beginning, it was destined for greatness. Valentino Garavani didn't just design clothes, he created fantasies. His signature Valentino red, or Rosso Valentino, became one of the most recognizable colors in fashion history. He dressed Jacqueline Kennedy for her wedding to Aristotle Onassis. He dressed Elizabeth Taylor, Sophia Loren, Julia Roberts in that unforgettable black and white Oscar dress, and virtually every woman of power and glamour from the 1960s through the 2000s. When Valentino Garavani retired in 2008, the fashion world held its breath. Could anyone carry on a legacy that monumental? Enter Pier Paolo Piccioli, who served as creative director and transformed Valentino into something even more extraordinary, a house that honored its couture heritage while embracing diversity, modernity, and a kind of emotional romanticism that resonated with a new generation. Under Piccioli's vision, Valentino became known for breathtaking runway shows that felt like theatrical experiences, for monochromatic collections that turned single colors into emotional statements, and for a commitment to inclusivity that pushed the boundaries of what a traditional Italian fashion house could represent. And then came Alessandro Michele, the former Gucci maestro, known for his maximalist, gender-fluid, reference-heavy aesthetic, who took the creative reins and pushed Valentino into even bolder territory. This is the world Min Yoongi stepped into, a world of Roman grandeur, of centuries-old craftsmanship, of fashion that doesn't whisper but speaks with the authority of an empire. And here's what makes this partnership so brilliantly unexpected and yet so perfectly logical. Yoongi's personal style has always existed in that exact tension between restraint and explosion. Look at his wardrobe choices over the years. He gravitates toward dark palettes, blacks, deep navies, charcoals, punctuated by unexpected moments of boldness. A statement jacket here, an unconventional silhouette there, leather, chains, sharp tailoring mixed with relaxed, almost nonchalant layering. It's a visual language that says, "I don't care what you think," while simultaneously being meticulously curated. That's not accidental. That's the aesthetic philosophy of someone who understands fashion as armor, as identity, as a form of controlled rebellion. And Valentino, a house that has always understood the power of controlled drama, recognized a kindred spirit. When the global ambassadorship was officially announced, the fashion press didn't just cover it, they analyzed it like a cultural event. Publications from WWD to Hypebeast to Vogue Italia dissected what it meant for a house like Valentino to choose a K-pop artist whose primary identity isn't as a fashion figure, but as a producer, a rapper, a songwriter who has been brutally honest about mental health, about the struggles of fame, about the loneliness of success. Yoongi's discography, both as Suga and as August D, reads like a confessional journal that millions of people around the world have turned to in their darkest moments. Tracks like The Last, where he openly discussed his battle with depression and social anxiety, or People, where he reflected on the nature of human relationships with a maturity that belied his idol status. These aren't the lyrics of someone playing a character. This is real. And that authenticity, that refusal to perform perfection, is exactly what modern luxury consumers are hungry for. They don't want airbrushed gods selling them products. They want real people with real stories who happen to have extraordinary taste. Yoongi delivers that in a way that very few public figures on Earth can match. The campaigns featuring Yoongi for Valentino were a study of creative restraint and impact. Unlike the high-volume, multi-image campaigns that many brands produce, Valentino's approach with Yoongi felt deliberate and almost cinematic. Each image, each appearance, each moment was crafted to let his natural presence do the heavy lifting, and it worked. Social media metrics following campaign releases showed massive spikes in engagement across Valentino's platforms, with Yoongi-related content consistently ranking among the highest-performing posts in the brand's history. The impact on the Asian luxury market, particularly in South Korea and Japan, where Yoongi's influence is stratospheric, was immediate and quantifiable. Retail analysts noted increased foot traffic in Valentino stores in Seoul, Tokyo, and other major Asian cities following campaign drops and event appearances. Now let's talk about the financial dimension, because this is where the story gets really serious. Valentino operates under the caring-adjacent luxury sphere. The brand has been owned by a Qatari investment fund, Mayula for Investments, since 2012, which also owns Balmain and has deep ties to the global luxury ecosystem. A global ambassadorship with a house of Valentino stature involves contracts that are structured with base fees, performance incentives, exclusivity premiums, and intellectual property considerations that push the total value into the multi-million-dollar range annually. Industry estimates, drawing from comparable deals with other luxury houses and the known market rates for ambassadors of Yoongi's global reach, suggest that his Valentino contract represents a deal worth potentially tens of millions of dollars over its full term. But the return on investment for Valentino is where the math becomes truly staggering. The earned media value, the free exposure generated through fan activity, organic social media posts, news coverage, and viral moments that Yoongi generates for the brand is estimated to be many multiples of whatever they're paying him. Every time Yoongi steps out in Valentino, thousands of fan accounts with millions of collective followers amplify the image across every platform. Every airport sighting, every behind-the-scenes clip, every casual moment captured becomes free advertising that no amount of paid media could replicate at the same scale and with the same emotional resonance. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of this partnership isn't visible in any spreadsheet or analytics dashboard. It's the narrative alignment. Valentino, at its core, has always been about passion, about creating beauty that moves people emotionally, that makes them feel something deeper than just aesthetic pleasure. Men Yoongi, at his core, is about the same thing. His music doesn't just entertain, it heals. His presence doesn't just attract, it resonates. He once said in an interview, "I want to make music that people can lean on when they're going through hard times."
That philosophy, using your craft to connect with people on a human level, is exactly what Valentino's legacy is built on. The house didn't just sign an ambassador, they found someone who understands at a fundamental level that true luxury isn't about what you own, it's about how something makes you feel. Min Yoongi makes people feel understood, and Valentino makes people feel beautiful. Together, that combination is worth far more than any number on a contract.
Number 3. Calvin Klein. Okay, let's get one thing absolutely straight before we dive into this. What happened when Calvin Klein signed the young Jungkook wasn't just a marketing campaign, it was a cultural earthquake. It was the kind of moment that comes along maybe once in a generation, where a single partnership between a brand and a human being creates a ripple effect so massive that it fundamentally alters the way the entire industry thinks about influence, selling power, and the economics of fame. We've seen iconic Calvin Klein campaigns before: Mark Wahlberg in 1992, Kate Moss in the 90s, Justin Bieber in 2015, all moments that defined their respective eras and made Calvin Klein one of the most talked about brands in the world. But what Jungkook did, he didn't just continue that legacy, he obliterated every benchmark that existed and forced the world to recalibrate what a single person's commercial impact could look like. Let's set the stage. Calvin Klein was founded in 1968 by Calvin Richard Klein in New York City, starting as a coat shop in the York Hotel on 7th Avenue. Within a decade, Klein's clean, minimalist, sensual aesthetic had turned the brand into a powerhouse. The Calvin Klein jeans campaigns of the late 70s and 80s, featuring a young Brooke Shields whispering, "Nothing comes between me and my Calvins," were among the most provocative and effective advertising moments in American history. The underwear campaigns that followed throughout the 90s basically invented the concept of luxury basics, the idea that something as simple as underwear could be elevated into a status symbol, a fashion statement, a cultural conversation. Calvin Klein didn't just sell products, they sold sex appeal, confidence, youth, and rebellion, all wrapped in a minimalist package that felt both accessible and aspirational. Under the parent company, PVH Corp., which also owns Tommy Hilfiger and operates a global portfolio worth billions, Calvin Klein has spent decades maintaining its position as one of the most recognized fashion brands on the planet, with annual revenues consistently in the multi-billion-dollar range. So when PVH and Calvin Klein's leadership team sat down to decide who would be the next face of their most iconic product categories, jeans and underwear, the two pillars that built the Calvin Klein empire, they needed someone who could do what Wahlberg did, what Moss did, what Justin Bieber did, but on a scale that matched the hyper-connected, social media-driven, globally integrated world of the 2020s. They needed someone whose physical appeal was undeniable, whose cultural relevance was universal, whose fan base was not just large, but fanatically devoted, and whose personal brand aligned with Calvin Klein's DNA of effortless cool. They needed young Jungkook. And the moment they got him, the world lost its collective mind. When the first images of Jungkook's Calvin Klein campaign dropped, the internet didn't just react, it detonated. We're talking about a social media explosion that shattered records across multiple platforms simultaneously. Twitter, now X, saw Jungkook-related Calvin Klein hashtags trend #1 worldwide within minutes. Instagram posts from Calvin Klein's official account featuring Jungkook became the fastest and most liked posts in the brand's entire history on the platform. The Calvin Klein website experienced traffic surges so severe that multiple reports indicated significant slowdowns and temporary accessibility issues, a digital stampede of consumers all trying to see and buy what Jungkook was wearing at the exact same time. The images themselves were instant classics. Jungkook in Calvin Klein denim, relaxed fits, washed blues, that effortlessly cool American aesthetic, paired with the iconic Calvin Klein underwear band visible above the jeans. Simple, clean, devastating. The photography captured exactly what Calvin Klein has always been about: the beauty of simplicity, the sex appeal of confidence, the power of a body that doesn't need embellishment to captivate. And Jungkook, with his athletic build honed from years of intense choreography and a well-documented dedication to fitness, delivered every frame with a naturalness that made the campaign feel less like a fashion shoot and more like a candid moment frozen in time.
But let's move beyond the aesthetics and talk about what really puts this partnership at number 3 on our list, the selling power. Because what Jungkook did to Calvin Klein's sales figures is the stuff that business school professors will be teaching for decades. The Jungkook effect, a term that had already been established in business media long before the Calvin Klein deal, went into overdrive. Specific products featured in his campaign saw sellout rates that defied all existing projections. We're talking about items that were expected to have a shelf life of weeks, disappearing in hours. Calvin Klein's denim category, which had been facing the same challenges as every other denim brand in an increasingly casualized market, received a shot of adrenaline that no amount of traditional advertising could have delivered. Retail partners reported increased demand. Online search volume for Calvin Klein jeans and Calvin Klein underwear spiked to levels that dwarfed any previous campaign launch in the brand's recent history. And this wasn't just happening in South Korea or Asia. This was a global phenomenon. Spikes in North America, Europe, Southeast Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, everywhere Army exists, which is essentially everywhere humans have internet access. The financial analysis of Jungkook's impact on Calvin Klein has been covered by Bloomberg, Forbes, Business of Fashion, and numerous financial outlets, all reaching the same conclusion. The return on investment for Calvin Klein on this partnership is extraordinary. The earned media value alone, the monetary equivalent of all the free organic exposure generated by fans sharing campaign images, creating content around the partnership, and driving conversations, was estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars within the first weeks of the campaign launch. To put that in perspective, most brands spend their entire annual marketing budget trying to achieve a fraction of that visibility. Jungkook generated it essentially for free, or rather for whatever Calvin Klein is paying him, which by all accounts is an absolute bargain compared to what they're getting back. The contract details, as with most deals of this magnitude, are not fully public, but the picture painted by industry insiders and Korean financial media is staggering. A global ambassadorship with Calvin Klein, covering both the jeans and underwear divisions, which are the brand's most commercially important product lines, for someone of Jungkook's caliber is estimated to be worth tens of millions of dollars. Some reports have suggested the total contract value, including base fees, campaign exclusivity, global usage rights, and performance-linked bonuses, could approach or exceed figures that place it among the most expensive celebrity endorsement deals in the fashion industry's history. PVH Corp's stock performance and quarterly earnings reports following the Jungkook partnership announcement have been scrutinized by financial analysts looking for correlation, and the early indicators were overwhelmingly positive. But here's what makes Jungkook's Calvin Klein partnership truly legendary beyond the numbers. It's the cultural significance. Jungkook became the first Korean artist, the first K-pop idol to hold this particular position with Calvin Klein, joining a lineage of campaign faces that reads like a hall of fame of global pop culture icons. For a Korean man to stand in that lineage alongside the Mark Wahlbergs and Kate Mosses and Brooke Shields of the world and not just hold his own, but arguably generate more commercial impact than any of them is a statement about how dramatically the center of global cultural gravity has shifted. This isn't just about fashion. This is about representation on the world's biggest stages. Jungkook once said, "I just want to show people that I work hard and I'm sincere in everything I do." Calvin Klein looked at that sincerity, that work ethic, that once-in-a-generation combination of visual appeal and genuine humility, and they wrote a check that reflected not what Jungkook is worth to them today, but what he'll be worth to them for years to come. Because the truth is, Jungkook didn't just model for Calvin Klein, he became Calvin Klein for an entire generation of consumers worldwide. And that kind of brand identification, that's not something you can buy, that's something that chooses you. Calvin Klein was smart enough to recognize it, bold enough to bet on it, and wealthy enough to lock it down before anyone else could.
Number 2, Dior. Stop everything. Stop whatever you're doing right now and let this sink in. We're talking about Dior, not a trendy streetwear label, not a fast fashion brand chasing clicks. Dior, Christian Dior, the house that literally saved French fashion after World War II, the house whose founder single-handedly restored Paris as the undisputed capital of global haute couture with one collection in 1947, the New Look, that was so revolutionary, so breathtakingly beautiful that it didn't just change fashion, it changed the way the entire world thought about beauty, femininity, luxury, and the power of design. This is a house that has dressed every first lady, every queen, every Hollywood legend, every cultural icon worth remembering for the past 8 decades. Grace Kelly, Princess Diana, Natalie Portman, Charlize Theron, Jennifer Lawrence. The list reads like a who's who of the most influential women in modern history. On the menswear side, under the visionary creative direction of Kim Jones, the British designer who previously transformed Louis Vuitton's menswear into the hottest ticket in fashion, Dior Homme became the epicenter of modern luxury menswear, blending Savile Row tailoring traditions with contemporary streetwear sensibilities, artistic collaborations, and a global vision that turned every runway show into a cultural event. Dior isn't just a fashion brand. Dior is the brand, the crown jewel of the LVMH empire, the largest luxury conglomerate in human history, led by Bernard Arnault, the richest man in the world, whose personal fortune has at times exceeded $200 billion. When LVMH and Dior make a strategic decision, it reverberates across every corner of the global luxury market. Every competitor pays attention, every analyst writes a report, every consumer feels the ripple. So when Dior, this titan, this institution, this living monument to the art of luxury, announced that Park Ji-min of BTS would be their global brand ambassador, the reaction wasn't just surprise, it was a seismic shift in the tectonic plates of the fashion industry. Let's be absolutely clear about what global brand ambassador for Dior means, because this isn't some regional promotional deal or a one-off campaign appearance. This is the highest tier of partnership that a luxury house can offer. A global ambassador represents the brand across all markets, all campaigns, all events, all communications worldwide. You become the face that the brand presents to the entire planet. You sit front row at every major show. You appear in campaigns that are displayed on billboards in Paris, Tokyo, New York, Dubai, London, Shanghai, and every other fashion capital on earth. You wear their clothes to every public appearance. You become synonymous with the brand's identity in the minds of hundreds of millions of consumers. It is, in every meaningful sense, a coronation, and Dior crowned Park Ji-min. The fashion world's reaction was immediate and volcanic. When Jimin attended his first Dior show at Paris Fashion Week, the scenes outside the venue were nothing short of hysteria. Fans from dozens of countries had flown to Paris specifically to catch a glimpse of him arriving. The media scrum was so intense that security protocols had to be escalated beyond what was typical even for the highest profile shows on the Paris calendar. Inside the venue, Jimin sat in the most coveted front row seat, the position traditionally reserved for the brand's single most important guest, and every photographer, every camera crew, every fashion editor in the room oriented toward him like satellites locked onto a signal. The images from that day dominated fashion media for weeks. Vogue, Elle, Harper's Bazaar, GQ, Hype Society, Hypebeast. Every publication ran features, analyses, and photo galleries centered on Jimin at Dior. Social media metrics exploded in ways that broke Dior's own internal records. Posts featuring Jimin on Dior's official Instagram became the most engaged content in the brand's digital history. Hashtags related to Jimin and Dior trended simultaneously in over 50 countries. The earned media value, that critical marketing metric that measures the monetary equivalent of organic exposure generated by Jimin's Dior debut, was estimated by industry analysts to be worth tens of millions of dollars from a single event. One show, one appearance, tens of millions in free global publicity. Now multiply that across an entire ambassadorship spanning multiple seasons, multiple campaigns, multiple events per year, and you begin to understand the scale of value we're discussing. But what makes Jimin's relationship with Dior so extraordinary isn't just the commercial impact, it's the artistic and emotional alignment that elevates this partnership into something that feels almost destined. Jimin's artistry has always been defined by a duality that is extraordinarily rare. He is simultaneously powerful and delicate, fierce and tender, masculine and ethereal. His dance training, rooted in both contemporary and traditional forms, gives him a physical expressiveness that transforms clothing into movement and movement into emotion. When Jimin wears Dior, the garments come alive in a way that static mannequins, hangers, and even most professional models simply cannot achieve. He doesn't just display the craftsmanship, he embodies the story that the designer intended to tell. Kim Jones, Dior's menswear creative director, has publicly expressed admiration for Jimin, and the campaigns they've produced together reflect a genuine creative dialogue. The imagery is consistently elevated, not just fashionable, but artistic, not just commercial, but meaningful. Jimin in Dior campaigns radiates a quiet intensity that draws you in, holds your gaze, and makes you feel something beyond the desire to purchase. It makes you feel the heritage, the artistry, the centuries of craft that went into every stitch. That emotional connection is what separates a good ambassador from a transformative one, and Jimin is unequivocally in the latter category. The financial architecture of Jimin's Dior contract represents one of the most significant endorsement deals in luxury fashion history. While exact figures remain protected by confidentiality agreements, standard practice at the LVMH level, the structure of a global Dior ambassadorship for someone of Jimin's stature involves multiple revenue streams that collectively push the deal into territory that would make most Fortune 500 executives pause. Base ambassadorship fees for global roles at top-tier LVMH houses are estimated to start in the high single-digit millions annually, before you even factor in campaign-specific fees, event appearance compensation, exclusivity premiums that prevent the ambassador from working with competing brands, digital content licensing, and, critically, performance-linked bonuses tied to measurable sales impact in key markets. When Korean financial media and international business publications have attempted to estimate the total value of Jimin's Dior contract, the number cited consistently range from tens of millions to potentially approaching figures that place this deal among the top celebrity endorsement agreements in the fashion industry globally. And the return on investment for Dior is almost incomprehensibly favorable. Consider this: Jimin's fans, which represent a massive subset of the global army, has demonstrated time and time again a willingness to not just admire, but to act. When Jimin wears a specific Dior piece, fans don't just like the photo, they find the product, they purchase it, they share their purchases, they create organic content that functions as user-generated advertising, reaching millions of additional consumers. This behavioral pattern, the conversion from admiration to action, is the holy grail of marketing, and Jimin delivers it at a scale that no amount of traditional advertising spend can replicate. Dior didn't just hire Park Jimin, they acquired a bridge between their storied Parisian heritage and the future of global luxury consumption. They recognize that the next generation of luxury buyers, the consumers who will drive hundreds of billions of dollars in spending over the coming decades, don't respond to the same marketing playbooks that worked in the 20th century. They respond to authenticity. They respond to emotional connection. They respond to cultural figures who represent their values, their aesthetics, their identity. And in Park Jimin, Dior found someone who embodies all of those qualities while simultaneously possessing an influence metric that breaks every existing model for predicting commercial impact. Jimin once said, "I want to show people that effort and sincerity can create something beautiful." Dior, a house that has spent 80 years proving exactly the same thing through fabric, thread, and vision, heard those words and recognized a philosophy identical to their own. This partnership isn't just business. It's a meeting of souls separated by decades and continents, but united by an unwavering belief in the transformative power of beauty. And the price tag attached to that kind of alignment? For Dior, it's not an expense, it's the smartest investment they've ever made.
Number 1. Louis Vuitton. This is it. The summit, the absolute pinnacle of everything we've been building toward on this list. And let me tell you right now, nothing in the history of celebrity brand partnerships, nothing in the history of luxury fashion marketing, nothing in the entire documented history of the relationship between entertainment and commerce has ever come close to what happened when Louis Vuitton and BTS joined forces. We're not talking about a big deal. We're not talking about an impressive deal. We're talking about the deal, the one that rewrote the rulebook, shattered every precedent, and forced the entire global luxury industry to fundamentally rethink everything they thought they knew about influence, culture, and the economics of fame in the 21st century. But to truly understand why this partnership sits at the undisputed number 1 spot on our list, you need to understand what Louis Vuitton is, not just as a brand, but as an institution, as a symbol, as arguably the most powerful name in the history of luxury. Louis Vuitton was founded in 1854 by a man named Louis Vuitton in Paris, France. He was a trunk maker,
a craftsman who designed luggage for the French elite, including Empress Eugenie, wife of Napoleon III. From those humble beginnings as a maker of travel trunks, Louis Vuitton grew into something that transcended fashion, transcended luxury, even the concept of a brand. Today, Louis Vuitton is the crown jewel of LVMH, Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton, the largest luxury goods conglomerate in human history, founded and controlled by Bernard Arnault, who has traded positions with Elon Musk as the richest person on planet Earth. LVMH's portfolio includes over 75 prestigious houses: Dior, Fendi, Givenchy, Celine, Tiffany & Co., Tag Heuer, Bulgari, Sephora, Dom Perignon, Hennessy, but Louis Vuitton is the one, the flagship, the moneymaker, the brand that generates the most revenue, the most profit, the most cultural impact of any single luxury label in the world. Louis Vuitton's annual revenue is estimated to exceed 20 billion euros. Yes, 20 billion euros from a single brand, making it not just the biggest luxury brand, but one of the most commercially successful brands in any industry, period. The iconic LV monogram, designed in 1896 by Louis Vuitton's son Georges, is recognized by an estimated 90% of global consumers. It is, by virtually every metric that exists, the most valuable luxury brand on Earth. So when Louis Vuitton decides to name someone as a global ambassador, the entire world pays attention. When they named all 7 members of BTS as global ambassadors simultaneously in 2021, the entire world stopped. Let that sink in for a moment. Louis Vuitton, the most prestigious, most valuable, most historically significant luxury brand in existence, looked at the global landscape of potential ambassadors, considered every A-list actor, every supermodel, every athlete, every musician, every cultural figure on the planet, and said, "We don't want one of them. We want all 7 of them. We want BTS." The announcement was made in April 2021, and the fashion industry's reaction was a mixture of shock, admiration, and the immediate recognition that a new era had just begun. This wasn't Louis Vuitton dipping a toe into K-pop culture. This was Louis Vuitton diving headfirst into the deepest ocean of cultural influence on Earth and declaring that BTS was the future of luxury representation. The partnership was orchestrated under the creative vision of Virgil Abloh, Louis Vuitton's menswear artistic director at the time, the groundbreaking designer who had already shattered barriers as the first Black American to hold that position at a major French fashion house. Abloh, who understood like few others the intersection of streetwear, high fashion, music, and youth culture, recognized that BTS represented something no other ambassadors could offer, a collective power that was greater than the sum of its extraordinary parts. 7 individuals, each with distinct personalities, styles, and cultural appeals, united by a bond and a brand identity that resonated with hundreds of millions of people across every continent. The BTS x Louis Vuitton campaigns were visual spectacles that pushed the boundaries of what fashion advertising could be. The members appeared in Louis Vuitton's Fall-Winter 2021 collection, each styled to reflect their individual personalities while maintaining the cohesive luxury aesthetic that defines the house. RM in intellectual, structured silhouettes, Jin in classic, refined pieces, Suga in sharp, dark-toned looks, HJ Hope in vibrant, statement-making ensembles, Jimin in fluid, ethereal designs, V in vintage-inspired art house aesthetics, Jungkook in youthful, dynamic fits. Together, they presented a panoramic vision of modern masculinity that was diverse, inclusive, and undeniably aspirational. The commercial impact was nothing short of nuclear. Social media engagement on Louis Vuitton's platforms during BTS-related content drops reached levels that made every previous campaign look like a whisper in a hurricane. The earned media value generated by the partnership was estimated by Launch Metrics and other analytics firms to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars per event, per campaign drop, per major public appearance. Louis Vuitton's website traffic from Asian markets, particularly South Korea, Japan, China, and Southeast Asia, surged in ways that reflected not just interest, but intent to purchase. Retail analysts reported increased foot traffic and sales velocity at Louis Vuitton boutiques in cities where BTS's influence was strongest, with some stores reportedly experiencing demand spikes for specific pieces worn by members that required emergency restocking.
But here's where the story takes an even more remarkable turn. When BTS announced their transition into a new chapter in 2022, with members pursuing solo activities and military service obligations, the question for every brand partner was, what now? And this is where Louis Vuitton's strategy revealed its true genius, and where one member in particular stepped into the spotlight that would define the next phase of this historic partnership. Jungkook, J-Hope. J-Hope's relationship with Louis Vuitton didn't just continue after the group's collective ambassadorship, it deepened, evolved, and became one of the most compelling individual luxury partnerships in the industry. While other members transitioned to ambassadorships with different houses within and beyond the LVMH portfolio, J-Hope maintained and strengthened his connection with Louis Vuitton, becoming the member most closely identified with the brand's ongoing narrative. And if you understand J-Hope's personal style and artistic identity, this makes perfect sense. J-Hope has always been the member whose fashion choices are the most adventurous, the most daring, the most unapologetically joyful. His style is characterized by bold colors, unexpected pattern mixing, statement accessories, and a fearless approach to silhouette that reflects his background as a street dancer and his personality as someone who radiates energy and positivity. Louis Vuitton, particularly under the creative legacies shaped during this period, has always celebrated that same spirit of bold self-expression, of travel and discovery, of the idea that luxury should be lived in, not just admired from a distance. J-Hope attending Louis Vuitton shows, front row, radiating the kind of charismatic energy that makes everyone around him smile, that's not marketing. That's magic. His presence at events has consistently generated massive media coverage, with photographers and fashion editors gravitating toward him not because of obligation, but because he is genuinely one of the most dynamic presences in any room he enters. The total financial value of BTS x Louis Vuitton's partnership, encompassing the group deal and subsequent individual arrangements, is widely regarded as one of the largest and most valuable celebrity endorsement packages in the history of the luxury industry. While exact contract figures remain confidential at the LVMH level, the scale of the arrangement can be inferred from multiple data points. Group ambassadorships with Louis Vuitton for entities of BTS's magnitude involve base fees that are staggering on their own, estimated in the tens of millions of dollars annually for the collective deal. When you layer on individual campaign fees, event appearances across multiple fashion weeks and global events, digital content and intellectual property rights, exclusivity provisions, and most critically, the performance-linked components tied to measurable sales impact, the total value of the BTS x Louis Vuitton relationship over its full duration is estimated by industry analysts and financial media to potentially reach into the hundreds of millions of dollars. Some of the more aggressive estimates, when factoring in the full economic ripple effect, the increased brand equity, the market share gains in Asia, the demographic expansion to younger consumer segments, the stock market impact on LVMH's valuation, suggest that BTS's association with Louis Vuitton generated billions of dollars in total economic value for the LVMH ecosystem. Not millions, billions with a B. And J-Hope carrying the torch forward as the most visible continuing link between BTS and Louis Vuitton represents something that goes beyond individual ambassadorship. It represents continuity. It represents the idea that the BTS x Louis Vuitton story isn't a chapter that closed, it's an ongoing narrative that evolves, adapts, and continues to generate value in ways that compound over time. Every time J-Hope appears in Louis Vuitton, he reminds the world of the collective power that made this partnership possible, while simultaneously proving that each member individually carries enough star power to anchor with the most prestigious brand on earth. This is the #1 spot for a reason, not because of a single shocking number, though the numbers are astronomical, not because of a single viral moment, though there have been dozens, but because the partnership between BTS and Louis Vuitton represents a paradigm shift, a before and after moment in the history of luxury, entertainment, and global commerce. Before BTS x Louis Vuitton, the idea of a K-pop group becoming the collective face of the world's most valuable luxury brand would have been dismissed as fantasy. After BTS,
And there you have it, the top 7 global brands that offered BTS insane contracts worth billions of dollars. From Bottega Veneta's quiet luxury finding its soulmate in RM's intellectual elegance, to Tiffany & Co. placing its 187-year-old legacy in the hands of Jimin's breathtaking grace, to Celine betting its entire new era on Taehyung's supernatural ability to sell out anything he touches, to Valentino recognizing the controlled fire burning inside Min Yoongi, to Calvin Klein unleashing Jungkook's devastating selling power on a global scale that shattered every record in the brand's history, to Dior crowning Jimin as the face of the most prestigious fashion house on earth, and finally to Louis Vuitton, the undisputed emperor of luxury, making the most historic move in fashion marketing by naming all 7 members as global ambassadors, and watching J-Hope carry that legacy forward with unmatched energy and style. But here's what I want you to take away from this list. Something bigger than the contracts, bigger than the billions, bigger than the brand names. What you just witnessed isn't simply a story about 7 guys getting rich endorsement deals. This is a story about value, real, undeniable, world-shaking value being created by people who were never supposed to be in these rooms. BTS didn't come from a big 3 agency. They didn't have wealthy parents with industry connections. They didn't have the backing of a massive corporate machine from day one. They came from Big Hit Entertainment, a small, struggling company that was one failed debut away from bankruptcy. They trained in a cramped basement studio. They shared meals because budgets were tight. They were mocked, dismissed, and overlooked by an industry that had already decided who the winners would be. And yet, here they are, not just sitting at the table with the biggest luxury brands in human history, but fundamentally changing how that table is set. Before BTS, the idea that a Korean act could command global ambassador roles at Louis Vuitton, Dior, Valentino, Calvin Klein, Celine, Tiffany & Co., and Bottega Veneta would have been laughed out of any boardroom in Paris, Milan, or New York. After BTS, it's the new reality. They didn't just open doors, they removed the walls entirely. And every Korean artist, every Asian creative, every underdog from every overlooked corner of the world who now gets a shot at these stages owes a debt to the trail that these 7 men blazed. The brands on this list aren't stupid. These are corporations with centuries of combined experience, armies of analysts, and billions of dollars at stake. They didn't choose BTS because of hype. They chose BTS because the data, the culture, and the undeniable truth all pointed to the same conclusion, that in the 21st century, influence doesn't belong to the loudest voice or the biggest budget. It belongs to the most authentic connection, and no one on this planet connects with their audience the way BTS does. Not through algorithms, not through manufactured personas, through music that heals, through honesty that disarms, through a bond between 7 members and millions of fans that has survived military service, industry skepticism, cultural barriers, and every obstacle the world has thrown at them. That bond is what these brands are really paying for. Not faces on a billboard, but access to a relationship between artists and audience that is unlike anything the entertainment industry has ever produced. So, the next time someone tells you that K-pop is just a trend, that BTS was just a moment, that the world has moved on, show them this list. Show them the billions. Show them the contracts. Show them Louis Vuitton, Dior, Valentino, Calvin Klein, Celine, Tiffany & Co., and Bottega Veneta all standing in line, checkbooks open, fighting for the privilege of being associated with 7 men from South Korea. And then ask them, does this look like a trend to you? This has been the top 7 global brands that offered BTS insane contracts worth billions of dollars. If this blew your mind, if you learned something new, if you felt something, share this with someone who needs to see it. Because this story deserves to be told, and these 7 men deserve to be remembered, not just as idols, not just as musicians, but as the cultural revolutionaries who proved that when talent meets sincerity, there is no ceiling. None. Zero. The sky was never the limit for BTS.